Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use the tidyr package. And what the tidyr package is going to allow us to do is reformat data that we have so that it's easier to work with. So first thing I like to do is pull up the help file for tidyr so that we can see exactly what this is and what the purpose of this package is. There might be even additional functions that we'd be interested in. In this case, I'm just going to show off a couple ones here that are particularly useful, which is going to be the pivot longer and pivot wider functions. So I have some data here that we can use, but first we're going to load up our library so that we can use it. And what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at some stock data. So I created some data here. This is data that we can work with for this library. So what it is it's a collection of price histories for a variety of different stocks. So I have 4 stocks here. I have Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, and I have the open, high, low, and close for each month. And we can reformat this table in a couple different ways. So the first one we can do is we can use the pivot longer function to essentially move the columns we're interested in into basically a factor. And so what that'll look like is we will use we're going to create a new data frame here. It's going to use the pivot longer function, and we might want to look at what this pivot longer function is before getting into it. So we can look at the help file here. And basically, we're going to pivot data from wide to long. So as we go back to the table here, this is considered wide because we have these 4 columns, each factor here having its own column. And what we're wanting to do is merge all these into a longer table. And so what is that going to look like? Well, first we're going to take our pivot longer function and we're going to be applying it to this data table. And we're going to be interested in merging the columns that we're going to call open, high, low, and close. And the reason we're doing that is because those are the names of our columns in the data table. So if we pull in column names data, we see the columns that we're using. So we're using these here. And so since we're referencing those are what we're going to be merging. And we're going to create a new column using this names2 component. We're going to call this OHLC, which is just going to be the shorthand for open, high, low, and close. And then lastly, what we're going to want to have is the values too, where we can just show the price. Okay, so this is we've picked this name and we've picked this name. So let's see what we get from this. Okay, so we get a new data table. It's 200 observations long. That makes sense because we had the 4 components here. So now we have this one column, which is OHLC, and then it's stretched longer because we have a row for each column now. So we have an open here, a high, a low, and a close, whereas before these were just columns. And because we returned the value of price, we created this column here which has the price. So for example, in this first row, we have the open and the price was $91.28. If we go back to our original data, we'll see that we had Apple here, and we had this column open, and that's where we're getting this price value. So that's what's being included in the table. And then if we go to the next row, we'll see we have Apple again. It's still July 2020. These rows carried forward because we didn't include them in our merge. So you'll see that they're all duplicated here. We have them 4 times each. But then we have this OHLC column where we took the original data column labeled high, and we're grabbing its price here. So 106.41. If we go back to our original data here, we'll see that if we go to the high column, we had a value of 106.41. So that matches. And sometimes you may get a data table that looks like this, and you actually want to go the other way, where you want to break out this column into multiple columns using these factors. And the way that you would do that is you would use the pivot wider function. So let's just make a new data table here, and we'll call it data wider. And in this case, we're going to use the pivot wider function, and we're going to feed into it our longer table that we just made. And then we have, this one's going to be a little more straightforward here, because all we need to provide it is the names from, which is going to be that OHLC column that we created, and then the values from, which is what we also created before, which will provide us price. So basically we're undoing the work that we just did and creating a data wider column, a data wider data frame. And if we click into this, you'll see it matches the original data table, but in this case we worked from this data longer data frame. So now we have 4 columns here, and that's what we broke out. If we compare it to the original data set, the ordering is a little different, but that's basically because we're working off of this file, which is in a different order as well. But you'll see that the data matches. So now we have Apple July 1st, we have the open, high, low, and close. And then if we go to our new table, we have Apple on July, and we have those same values for open, high, low, and close. And that's how tidyr works. So we're going to be using tidyr anytime we need to basically clean up the data that we're working with.